So on some issues, I'm very traditionally conservative. But like one issue, for example, where I depart pretty strongly from the traditional Republican line is I think a lot of folks in the Republican Party, they see what's going on with Google, Apple, Facebook, with big tech writ large, and they say, well, we don't like what they're doing. We don't like the fact that they censor conservatives, but they're private companies, and so we can't actually do anything with them. And my response to that is, well, first of all, they're not actually private companies. They benefit from a ton of special government privileges, but also they're just too powerful. Like however they got there, they're way too powerful and they're way too big at this point. So I'm willing to go, with Ken Buck and with Josh Hawley and with others and say, look, we've got to actually rein in the power of these companies, because if they control what you're allowed to say in America, we don't have a First Amendment anymore. If we don't have a First Amendment, we don't have a real country.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've discussed this with Tucker on his show many times, and years, like 2 or 3 years ago, I was still like, no regulation, don't touch anything, the libertarian side of me. And I actually have come more towards what you just laid out there, which is what Josh Hawley's been laying out. But what do you think that actually looks like? Because if the founders could have never imagined something more powerful than the government, which is what we've got, I mean, do you want to send government bureaucrats to look at the Google algorithm as if they could do it? Or is it breaking these companies up? I mean, I know you like the competition side, and we'll talk about Rumble in just a little bit, but like, what does it actually look like that you would want done to big tech?
Yeah. So yeah, bracketing the things you can still do in the private sector, which I think is important. I think that there are ranges of options from less radical to more radical, right? So I think a slightly less radical option is you just make, in the same way that like you can't censor somebody because they're black or because they're white. You used to not be able to do that, of course, the last couple of years.
Yeah. Give it a couple more months.
You can't, for example, turn off an electric utility. Can't turn off somebody's power because they don't, like the sex or the gender or the race of the people who need the power. I think one thing you could do is just add political viewpoint to that protected class. Say if you're a conservative and you're censored on Facebook, you basically have a right to file a lawsuit in the same way that if you're censored because you're black, you have a right to file a lawsuit. That's sort of option one. I think a little bit more radical is the antitrust option, effectively breaking up these companies, making it impossible for them to sort of control the discourse because you have more competition among the platforms that are out there. I'm basically supportive of that, though I think that you have to do it the right way, or effectively these sort of companies just reform as natural monopolies. The thing that I'm really intrigued by is, like, does the business model of Silicon Valley actually make sense, right? So, I have my iPhone right here. If you think about like what an iPhone is, it really is a thing that gets you to stare at it as much as possible so that it can take your data and then sell it back to you in the form of targeted advertising. There's a pretty good argument that this Silicon Valley business model, which distracts a lot of attention and effectively is built upon the theft of data, should be completely outlawed, right? And make it illegal to sort of collect people's data without a whole host of additional protections. I think that would blow up the model of Silicon Valley. I think maybe that's too radical. But if I'm actually laying my cards,
hey, as a guy that just started a tech company that's doing subscription and doesn't sell data, keep it going, keep it going.
But I have to say that honestly, I would be supportive of that. If you basically said you can no longer effectively steal people's data, I think that would be really good for our country.